In these chapters, we get these scenes, so it's safe to say that they are going to be a treat for people who ship Azure and Nina. The chapter starts with their grand arrival in Fortna. The journey to the royal capital takes about half a month by sea and several more days over land. When they finally arrive, soldiers line the streets to welcome the king. Then we see Didas, who stops Nina from following Azure. He calls her Princess Alicia, but tells her that even then she cannot go with the king. She watches him walk away and feels like he is very far away from her now. She is then taken to a room to change into traditional Fortnan clothes. While she is in her room, Mihulum suddenly bursts in. He is clearly very happy to see her. Noticing his cheeks, she jokes that he has gotten rounder, and he says that he eats more meat during the winter. During their talk, Miva appears and he gets scared of her, calling her a savage beast, until Nina explains that the tiger is a friend. Once things calm down, she asks him if he knows where her other friends are. He offers to take her there, claiming that he knows everything. However, as they walk through the palace, she feels that the atmosphere has changed. He tells her that many people in the castle were replaced after Azure took the throne. He also says that everyone is a lot stricter now and there are many new rules. As for the previous king, he is taking it easy at the villa, while the former queen is still in the palace. Surprisingly, she is very cooperative with Azure, mainly because he forged a strong relationship with her home country, Stabia. By the way, it's the same country they passed through on their journey, the one that assisted them. She wonders if Fortna and Azure are finally at peace now. By then, they arrive at their destination and see guards outside the tower where everyone is staying. Mahulum says that they are all being treated hospitably, but when they go inside, Tot is complaining, calling their stay house arrest. Mahulum asks who this rude guest is, and that's when we learn that the day after they set sail, he was found among the cargo. If you remember the previous chapters, we saw Bedo's lady soldier leading him somewhere. That somewhere was their ship. This means that he literally shipped his brother to another country. Nina wonders if that's what he meant when he asked her to take care of his brother. When I first read it, even I thought he was referring to Seth, but I guess he was talking about Toad, or maybe both. All of them were in Sett's room, so Nina asks why they are there. Sol straight up says that he was waiting to ambush her, while Anne was just there because she didn't know what to do. Toad, on the other hand, is still acting arrogant. He says that he'll look after Sett because she would ruin the atmosphere. He doesn't realize that there is literally no one to help him now that he's no longer in Galgada. While Nina deals with him, the other two take Muhulum away. Sol already seemed shady to him, and after casually asking him to tell him about the star god, he seems even more like a scary creep. Anne tries to clarify that although he is suspicious, he's not a bad person, which I'm pretty sure didn't help. Nina goes towards Seth, who is sitting by the window like before. He hasn't spoken since the port scene. Back then, we did see a grown-up version of him for a second who told her that he loved her, but now he's back to being the tiny him again. She scolds him like a child, saying that it's getting harder to know what to do and that he's driving her nuts. She pokes his forehead, telling him that she doesn't care if he starts acting like he used to. He can be annoyingly cold and arrogant like before.
We've got to do something about that laugh, though.
He grabs her hand and looks at her for a moment, but just as she begins to say that he's back to normal, he returns to being a child again. She wonders if she should train until she's as strong as a war god. Would that make him feel safer? The bird Nina comes to sit beside them, and the three of them stay there together. She wonders if doing this is enough, or if he can hear her even a little while Toad stands at the end of the room. The scene shifts and we see Sol growing impatient about going to the Astral Villa. Nina tells him that she hasn't had a chance to talk to Azure yet, so she doesn't know. On the boat, they said they would discuss it after reaching home because it's holy ground and even the king cannot act quickly there. They didn't talk about it much since others were seasick and her attention was divided. Sol insists on making their position clear, even though he knows that kings are usually busy. Back in her room, her brother says the same thing, telling her that it's the new year and that the birthday celebration is approaching, so Azure is busier than usual. He tells her to just eat some snacks and make herself at home, but she barely feels like she's standing. It's like she's floating. She doesn't know what she's supposed to do there anymore. Every time she tries to meet him, the guards stop her. Either he's in a meeting or she simply can't reach him. Getting tired of never having a chance to talk to him, she complains about it to Anne. Toad overhears the conversation and calls him an idiot, even saying that he will get tired and drop dead one day and adds that it would save him the trouble of killing him. Hearing that, Nina gives him an iron fist to knock some discipline into him, but she is clearly worried about Azure. That's why she takes matters into her own hands and decides to sneak into his room. And we know she's pretty good at it, so she finally makes it inside. But he isn't there even though it's late. She has also brought some snacks, so while she waits for him, she starts eating them, and before long, she drifts off to sleep on his bed. It smells like him, a light, noble scent. While she's asleep, he enters the room. He has bags under his eyes and looks like he hasn't rested in ages. He can't believe she's in his bed, still wearing her shoes, with nuts scattered everywhere. She even mumbles about snacks in her sleep. He sits beside her and pinches her nose to wake her up. She opens her eyes and realizes he's looking at her. He asks why she sneaked in, sounding slightly annoyed. She stutters, saying that he seemed busy, so she was worried about him, and that's why she brought some healthy snacks. He asks if he looks like a squirrel, since all she brought were nuts. Then he leans closer, saying she has no self-control. She starts panicking, and then remembers what Bido said, making her panic even more. She thinks he's about to kiss her, so she tries to come up with excuses, but her body won't move at all. In the end, he collapses on top of her and falls asleep. He's just that exhausted. She lets out a nervous laugh and replays what she was thinking, which makes her blush as she gently pushes him off. Since she definitely can't be doing that kind of stuff, she looks at him thinking that he looks like a little kid with his eyes closed, saying he usually seems so stiff and intimidating. She reaches out her hand but stops, thinking that she wants him to be happy. The whole atmosphere reminds her of when they first met, how lonely she was and how much she wanted to be special to someone. Then he became special to her. He was the first person to give her something truly meaningful before she was even ready to be married off to another country just to protect him, realizing that even if they can't be together, she still wants him to be happy. She tells him that she once thought being in love was nothing but happiness, but she never imagined there would be days when those feelings, love, care, and importance, would grow so overwhelming that she wouldn't know what to do with them. She describes his love as the kind that makes her heart tighten, but in the end, she feels like she's of no use to him. Just then, in his sleep, he asked her to stay by his side, but sadly, she doesn't hear it. She gently pats him with her head, asking her star powers to take away his exhaustion, and then she leaves. He wakes up wondering if she has already gone back and promises himself that he will free her from the role of Alicia. This is where chapter 38 ends. Before we move on to chapter 39, make sure to like the video. It helps a lot in keeping me from being broke and depressed, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that as well. This chapter starts with Nina eating some dried meat. Her brother isn't sure why she's eating more than usual, so she tells him that she needs to build her strength. He still doesn't understand, since in the future she's supposed to become a bride. She explains that if she isn't strong, she won't be able to support anything. And while blushing, she adds that she needs the strength to shove people off her and stuff. In the middle of their meal, the queen arrives, saying that she seems rather carefree for a princess who came crawling back. She adds that whether it's a homecoming or not, it's not a good look. She literally comes and goes after saying that. But it does make Nina question whether things are actually going well between her and Azure. So Muhulum explains that things weren't great at first, but the Stabian royal family spoke to her. Then he hesitates to say more, so Nina proudly tells him that he can tell his super tough big sister anything. He looks around nervously before telling her something he overheard before Azure became king. He heard that the previous king gave him 1 year to rule and then asked him to die. That's all he heard, but the king's voice was very cold when he said 1 year. So now he's worried, and Nina begins to think that he might actually be killed. But seeing her younger brother so worried, she tries to cheer him up, saying it's fine. Maybe the king just meant that Azure should work as if he only had 1 year left. She tries to come up with something convincing, but in the end, she just tells him to believe in his older sister. And the innocent little prince actually does. Then she suddenly thinks of someone who might have answers and goes to find the former king, his grandfather. When she meets him, she gets straight to the point. He remarks that she came in without following proper procedures, and she gasped, saying she should have at least brought a gift. But that's not what he meant. He was simply calling her rude. She apologizes but remains determined to learn about the previous king's schemes. He dismisses his guards and tells her that Azure chose to become king himself. Before that, he came came to him and said he would take the throne, and if the old man wants to stop him, he should do it then. But the old man only asked if Fortna's future was among his goals. Obviously, Azure has always loved this land, so he intends to make it a nation that cannot be destroyed. That was enough. The old man says Azure is capable of doing it, and that he may have been waiting all this time for him to finally want it. Even though Azure was meant to be a stepping stone, a fake, not truly part of the royal family and unrelated by blood, the old man doesn't care. To him, Azure is still the king he raised. He tells Nina that he has 1 year and immense strength behind him, so there's nothing to worry about. The former king, his grandson, lacks character, and no matter what schemes he comes up with, he won't be able to do anything serious. He asks her not to be afraid and to trust Azure. She finally smiles and says she'll head back quickly since she actually snuck out. But before she leaves, he stops her, making her panic, thinking she stepped on a star crest again. Instead, he simply wants to praise her. He's received reports that she did everything she could for Fortna, and he truly appreciates it. She gets flustered and feels relieved that her efforts weren't for nothing. When she returns, she bursts into Seth's room excitedly. Anne notices and says something good must have happened. Without noticing them, she goes straight to Seth to tell him everything. But Toad interrupts, telling her to keep her hands off him because she'll dirty him. So she hugs Seth's head just to make him even angrier. Next, we see Didus lecturing Nina. He says her freewheeling behavior is completely unacceptable. He found out about her visit to the former king, and even that she snuck into Azure's bedroom. She stutters, trying to explain that she just wanted to see him. But he cuts her off, saying that at the coronation ceremony, the king will officially marry the Princess of Stabia. The word marriage shocks her. He explains that royals become adults and take wives at 17. Azure has long refused, but now that he's king, he must marry and undergo the haircutting ritual. When Nina asks what the princess is like, he says she's an intelligent princess that no one could complain about. To Nina, it feels like her head is about to explode. She tries to process everything while Didus continues explaining how it will strengthen ties with Stabia. In the end, she says she'll be more careful and runs off. She doesn't even know what she's saying. Her chest feels heavy, like it's filled with mud, and she can barely breathe. A day passes and she hasn't eaten anything. The maids worry that she isn't feeling well. She lies on the floor, thinking about how painful everything feels. She tries to reason with herself, saying that even if he marries someone else, he'll still be important to her. He'll still be special. He'll still be alive, and she won't feel any different about him. She tells herself that over time, the things you love only grow. So of course, he will find more things to love too. And she has to accept that. She knows she shouldn't complain, but it still hurts. As Miva tries to comfort her, a maid arrives to say that the king wishes to see her. She doesn't want to go, but she does anyway. There he is, looking beautiful, his forehead exposed. Just seeing him makes her think about how he'll cut his hair and marry a real princess. He called her to talk about the future, but she doesn't want to hear it. He's confused, but then she suddenly bursts into tears, saying she doesn't want to hear anything. She doesn't want to hear him talk about marrying the princess. His confusion turned into shock as she went on saying that it's already been decided, but she doesn't want to hear it. In her mind, she doesn't want to say any of this, but the words keep coming out on their own. She even asks why he brought her back to Fortna if he was going to do this. She starts to say, "Don't tell me I'm the only one for you," but stops herself because that's not what she wants to say. She knows he did everything because he cares about her. Still crying, she asks him to forget it, saying he didn't do anything wrong. She's just not thinking straight, telling him they should talk another time. He fixes his hair and with a slight blush admits that he's at a loss. Then he tells her that while he's engaged to the Princess of Stabia, he has no intention of marrying her, and he has already discussed it with her, though the king doesn't know. Hearing that he spoke to the princess makes Nina's shoulders slump, but she quickly apologizes, saying there's nothing wrong with that. He calls her name and tells her that he only wants her by his side, not the princess. He kneels, saying he loves her twinkling blue eyes because no one else has them. As he moves closer, she instinctively pulls back, so he gently holds her arm and asks her not to retreat like before. And then he kisses her. I might not have seen it coming, and I might have screamed silently, but it is what it is. Moving on, at the end of the chapter, we see Sol is officially appointed as the guest general of the country. He asks Azure if that means he trusts him. He replies it's not exactly trust, since Sol is from Galgada, but he does trust that he is an unwavering ally of the Star Princess. Sol also asks if the Astral Villa is really something special, but he says he doesn't know. It's holy ground that even the king cannot intrude upon. It's been that way since the country was founded. He adds that they must be careful with how they treat a newly arrived star person, because it was the Astral Villa that ensured the real Princess Alicia's wagon fell off the cliff. Sol starts talking about the folk tale, but a guard interrupts with news that the port of Galgada was destroyed in a massive storm right after they left. Now it's confirmed that they won't be making any moves for a while. A volcanic eruption and a storm? Was it a coincidence, or does the power really exist? Sol wonders who these star people really are and thinks that one day they might spark a war. Now, as someone who's read ahead, I can tell you there might not be a war, but the people of the Astral Villa definitely makes me want to get violent. Anyway, the final panel of the chapter shows the reason behind Azure's bangs, and honestly, it's adorable. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to me. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.
Maybe we could be okay, maybe you could be the change.